We're back at you with gloves off, and today we're going to be talking to one of Kempo's dearest professors, Mr. Rich Hale. How are we doing today, Professor? You doing good?
Fantastic, my friend. Doing just great.
Well, let's touch base a little bit on Kempo and a little bit about you and how you got involved and all that good stuff, and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
It's always interesting talking to Kempoists.
Saying, how did you guys get involved in Kempo? Or in karate in general, really. I was a Billy Jack fan. Boy, to take this foot and put it right there and not a damn thing he could do about it was like my life's dream. And then I thought everybody was inspired by Bruce Lee and Billy Jack. And when I asked that question on Facebook, I think about 80% of the people said that it was Jeff Speakman and The Perfect Weapon. So there's a change in life and how people get introduced to the art. It was Billy Jack. As far as getting into Kempo itself, I was standing at a gas station, pumping gas, and a guy come up and asked me what kind of karate I studied, and I said, Blakamp. He said, Blakamp. There's Taekwondo, Shotokan, Kempo. I said, Blakamp. Well, I later found out that was the name of our school. It wasn't the style. That's how little I knew about what I was doing at the time. And then he told me about Ed Parker's Kempo. And my first thought was, Ed's Kempo? That does not sound very oriental. I mean, this can't be any good if some guy by the name of Ed created a karate system. So we talked for a while, and he was a real genuine guy. So he said, go home, get a phone book, look it up, and just check it out. You know, there's no harm in just having your eyes open. So I went down to Colton, California. Now, this is interesting to me. A lot of guys today say, well, I can't study because I moved 10 miles, 2 miles, 3 miles away. For 4.5 years, I studied in San Bernardino, California, and I lived in Big Bear Lake. So every single class was a 100-mile round trip.
Sure.
But when I found something I wanted, I never gave it a second thought. I didn't think of the hardships. I was excited to get off work and run down to San Bernardino, take my class, and come home again. That's kind of how I got started, both in karate and in the Ed Parker system.
Yeah. And every Kempoist that's been attracted to Kempo in general has a story of that, has similar stories that all of a sudden you were brought into the Parker system or American Kempo. Mine was a little bit different. I was 17 years old. I walked into an Aikido school, and I sat down, and there was this big old Hawaiian man right next to me. His name was Keith C. And he said, the boy's good, eh, brah? I'll join if you join. I said, sure. About 6 months later, we started carpooling because we both lived in Irving, and we had to drive on the other side of Dallas, which was about 45-minute drive. Maybe sometimes it took us about an hour and a half due to traffic. And one day I walked into his house, and he goes, can you go get my backpack? It's over there in my office. And when I walked in there, I saw all these certificates, him with Emperado and also with Parker, and 6th degree here, and there's 7th here, and this issue. And I come back and I said, how come you're wearing a white belt? You never told me you did martial arts. And he goes, no, because every time you study a new art, you're a beginner. And those words always resonate with me because we continue growing, we continue seeing people that teach us and seeing new styles, and we always have to be the ever-going student instead of the one in the front. And that's what many of us, just like yourself, we do, and exactly what you said, we traveled a lot to learn how to fight. And I think that's very important because in today's world, you don't have people traveling 2 miles for a karate school, yet alone 45 to an hour and a half drive, And
School in Ventura, California, and this young boy walked in, probably 10 years old, and he was all excited. And he said, I want to go to school here. And I'm like, wow, man, you already heard about us. I go, why, did you hear about us? He goes, no, I just live over there. I guess my fame had not traveled very far at that time. So that is kind of how it is today. They study based on geography instead of truly searching out a system. You know, but that thing on previous training is a double-edged sword. If you walk into a school and don't disclose 30, 40 years training, they consider you to have sandbagged and all that. If you do come in and disclose your training, they think you're a braggart on your old system and want you to just shut up and learn. So there is that balance between, yes, I have had previous training. Especially it was fun when I started going into jiu-jitsu schools. I would say, yeah, you know, I'm an old karate black belt. And they start salivating. I go, no, I know how this works. I said, all my life I used to think I was punching people. And now I discovered I'm simply giving you my arm. So able to study the grappling arts to a given degree.
That's true, because every school, every time you change, even within the same style, you go, you know, to a seminar and so forth, you'll have those that want to test you. And sometimes they're taller, or sometimes they're bigger, or sometimes they're just not that smart. Then they realize they're not that same level of the food chain. And that always gets me. But you always have to be humble, because everywhere you go, you're going to learn. You're going to learn from the students that are there. You're going to learn from the teachers that you see. You're going to learn all the time. And that's a beauty about Kempo. Kempo's ever evolving. And it's always not changing, but it's always growing. And everybody, you and all the Kempo professors and Sigons out there and Sifus out there, they all have a piece of that puzzle. And you might get that across to somebody, or you might see one person one time, and all of a sudden, oh man, I've been doing that wrong for the longest time. It clicked. Why? Because the little pieces of puzzle everybody just grabs. And that's the beauty of the Kempo system.
The other day that the amazing thing to me is I'm a very Ed Parker Kempo oriented guy. I really believe in his system and everything. And there'll be a time that I've just decided, you know, I don't care what the book says. In fact, I don't care what Mr. Parker said. I think it goes this way. I don't care what the book says. And I go and I look at the book, and that's what the book said. I had been doing it wrong for 40 years. And the only thing I discovered on my own was the way I should have been doing it all along. These are enjoyable, you know, if you're humble enough to look at them and laugh it off instead of deny that ever happened.
Yeah.
You know, I don't get challenged at seminars so much, but the funniest thing I ever had happen, I was doing a seminar in Las Vegas at the Internationals, and I taught on Friday night. And I had a lot of key things that I was doing in there, and one of them, as you and I have talked about personally, is the lack of power in a lot of Kempoists today. And I was giving it an example. I said, you know, there's that thing where you're making the horse running sound. I said, it sounds good, but it doesn't hurt. And everybody chuckled. And then I went on, and I had other key things that I always say and key elements I always bring up. And then the next morning at 8 o'clock, another guy was teaching a seminar. And he was teaching my seminar from Friday night. He used the same little horse clapping thing. He must have written everything down when he got back to his room. And I'm looking at the people that were participating, and they're looking at me, kind of giving me this look. And you know, later I told him, I guess it's a compliment. It's kind of silly.
It actually...
It was funny.
It happens. Stuff like that happens. And you know when you've touched somebody when they're teaching like you, or they're at least trying to do stuff like you. And, right. And remember, copying is one of the best forms of flattery, right? That's what many say. Let's touch base, because you said about power. What has changed within the power from the ones training in the 60s to the 70s, 80s, 90s? What was the transition? What came, what left? What was a different mentality, I guess? We can put it that way.
Back in the 60s and 70s, I would say, first of all, nobody really made a living at the martial arts. Pretty much everybody had a job, and everybody had a school that you had to enter from the alley. And nobody was making their house payments and car payments. So it was a lot more of a pass or fail environment. You either passed your test or you failed your test. And then on top of that, pretty much all the Kempo instructors of the time were old karate instructors. My own instructor, Richard Callahan, he was a black belt in Goju and a black belt in Shotokan. And Mr. Parker asked him one day, hey, do you need a job? And he goes, yeah. Well, I'm opening a Kempo school in Colton, California. Why don't you run it? He goes, I don't know Kempo. Yeah, I know that, but you know karate. You know how to kick and punch. I'll have Huck come by. He'll teach you all the techniques and forms, and then you just teach it on to the students. And that's what he did. We used to peek in the window and watch Huck teaching Rich. And we were basically karate people doing Kempo material. Mm-hmm. You evolve naturally into more of a circular, fast-moving system, but we still trained for power. Today, it seems a lot more of the people are trying to, like they get a little stopwatch saying, I just did thundering hammers in 1.7 seconds. Mm-hmm. And they're seeing how many times they could strike in 2 seconds. And we never cared about that, and most of us still don't care about that. We care about how effective each and every movement is. Mm-hmm. The first block should stop a fight. Sure. If it doesn't, you put everything you got into the next one. If it doesn't stop, you do another one. So we don't flurry through it like today.
Right. You know, I saw there was a lot more, how can I say, testing of instructors back then, I guess. You know, you did not allow other instructors to come in and kind of bulldog your school, if you want to put that, because there was a lot of, I guess I grew up at the latter part, or opened a school at that transition, which is no longer used. I mean, if somebody talked bad about you, you walked into the school and you said, hey, what's going on? You know, and that was done then. Now you go and invite somebody at somebody else's schools, they call 911, you know, that kind of stuff occurs. And that mentality of Kempo kind of resonated. You know, we lived in Dallas. In Dallas, you have a lot of Kempo. You have a lot more Kempo now there. And you kind of had that idea from the Kempo guys. The Kempo guys are going to fight you. The Gajo Kempos are tough guys, are going to fight you. You know, that kind of idea that came from, you know, the Taekwondo guys were just kind of, okay, those are the tournament guys, but these are the guys that are going to go to the bar and take care of business, you know, and that kind of mentality ran through those that were.
Somebody, you walked into his school,
yeah,
and you challenged him. Today, you go to Facebook,
yeah,
and you talk a bunch of crap about him.
Yeah,
and oh man, if you didn't live in Missouri, yeah, you know, I'd come right over and kick your butt. Okay, yeah, whatever.
You know, back, yeah, you know, and I took that mentality, and when I was in France, well, you had that, you know, and there were people that tested. There were people testing the American that came over here to do Savat, you know, and all this other stuff. Well, okay, but
been tested. Everybody had somebody walk into the academy.
Oh yeah,
and challenge you. They weren't all life and death fights, because most of the time people who challenged you were a little tipsy anyway.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of, you know, proving your point and let life go on. I've seen some old horrible videos of people really trying to hurt people in that. You know, that's where I have so much respect for the Gracies when they were doing their original challenges, that they're fighting guys who are trying to pin them to the ground and punch them over and over and over in the face. And if they couldn't stop them, if the Gracies couldn't stop them, that's what would have happened. And instead of brutalizing these people, they'd roll them over, choke them out, or better man than I am. If somebody's out there trying to hit me like that, I think I might take a little bit more punishment out on them. I have a lot of respect for the family and their traditions.
Sure. And all those traditions, I guess it resonates throughout the martial arts, all of them. You know, you have your tough guys, and you have your teachers, and you have the teachers of those tough guys, and so on and so forth. And you have the folks that just want to learn just to kind of maintain a lifestyle. And all's fine and dandy. I think change has occurred. I think everything became more commercialized. you started getting more folks that all of a sudden you have to pay the bills for the school, you have to pay your mortgage, you have to pay your car, and so on and so forth. So guess what? It's turned a blind eye, and let's just push them through the system. Is that good or bad? Well, there's many opinions. I guess both of us can go with it.
Of course, that's not good, that we're just going to push people through. And you look at a family especially, it's easy for somebody like myself. I teach mostly around the country and around the world. I teach privately. I have small groups. We have a jiu-jitsu group that meets at my place a couple, 3 days a week. I teach Kempo, but I don't have to make a living at it. I could say something like, that's all horrible. But if I were making a living at it, and little Johnny is a pretty horrible yellow belt, but if I failed Johnny, Sally and Timmy quit too, and I've just lost $400 a month in revenue at the academy, you know, you're pretty tempted to let the kid pass, and then hopefully he gets better, because some of them do get better and worse. You know, you never climb that scale like that. Everybody's journey goes that way. But here's something that is different. Quite honestly, I think among all the people I originally studied with, we all had some kind of personality disorder. You had to be a different type of an individual to join and stay in a school back then.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it is open to a lot more people. You don't have to be a fist fighter. Yeah. We used to train in there to go bar fighting, and that was part of our classes.
That's
how to bar fight. Nowadays, that's not highly recommended.
No.
And it did open the martial arts up to a lot of people who level of fighting. So it's a good thing. The more people you bring into the art, the more people have the opportunity to really get into the art. But if, like let's say if you only had 10 students, you might get one to stick around. But if you got 200 students, you're more likely to get 3 or 4 people to stick around. So, good and bad.
You're absolutely correct. Back then it was what you did and how tough you were and so on and so forth, or did you win or did you lose, and if you lost, did you lose that badly, and so on and so forth. And now it's more like you don't see that. You will get students, don't get me wrong, you do get students that they're more, the only thing they want in life is, are they going to win the fight in the bar fight, right? But you try not to go through what you went through, you know what I mean? I don't want my students to understand what the caress of a blade happens to you when they push it through you, or how to muffle a stick or a pull cue when they're trying to nail you with it. You don't want that for your students to experience. So you kind of test it.
Watch somebody and they fall down and hit their head on the curb and die.
Yeah, understood. So so you have a different type of mentality.
Happy that we made it through our martial art journeys without going to jail.
No, you're absolutely correct. A lot of us were happy for that. I tell my guys now, I go, you guys want to go out there and hell race? Here's what you do.
Much onto that path, because I don't want to glorify that aspect of it specifically among those people that are listening and go, wow, I want to grow up as a tough karate guy too.
But I tell them, do you have about 30 grand with you? And they say, why is that? Because you need to pay a lawyer, bail bondsman, and everybody. So let's get, but.
In this litigious society, when I moved down from Alaska again is a little bit more on the wild side.
Sure.
And you didn't have to be very careful about what you said and what you did inside of a karate school. Well, as soon as I came down to California, I bought a school that had 100 students. And as their dues come up, every single one of them, bar one, quit. And I signed up new ones along the way. So, a year later, I had 100 students. Was supposedly had earned a purple belt. And the parents said, my son earned his purple belt. We want you to give it to him. And I said, well, I have no record of it. I have no test. Could, show me some purple belt material. And he was very like a girl. Well, they sued me. I find myself in court, and I said, Your Honor, what does this look like to you? He says, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter if he does punch like a girl. What's important is you hurt his self-esteem. And they said either you give him his purple belt or you give him his money back. Well, he's one of several that got their money back. Now, maybe it was because now, I'd love to punch like Aussie we're talking about, and there's a lot of great women fighters, but it was an old school term. I used it. Maybe I was wrong, but it's the idea nowadays that
you cannot.
It's got to be more careful.
To you, how has those that were in California, because it was a lot different, you saw a lot more Kempos in California, who were the ones that influenced you the most besides Mr. Parker?
Well, everybody on their own level. It's like Frank Trejo.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any of us out there who weren't influenced by Frank, his energy, the fact that he could fight, he could do techniques, he could do forms, he could do anything he wanted to do with enjoyment. And then there's people like Huck. I always refer to Huck Planis as a national treasure of Kempo. He's always been so clean and so clear, never trying to embellish. But boy, does he hold a solid line when he wants you to perform and to do something. I used to fly from Alaska down to Chico, California, where Huck was working as a bartender at a place called the Hatch Cover at the time. I'd go in, I'd have a couple of beers. At midnight, he'd get off work, we'd have dinner, go back, chit-chat and talk, go in and have a lesson. And he goes, well, what do you want to work on? I go, well, last time we worked on short one. Can we look on long one? He goes, yeah, let me see short one. So if you didn't have practiced what he gave you last time, he didn't care that I spent $2,000 to fly 3,000 miles. You're going right back to short form one. Yes, and I wish more people would hold the line. Also, you got, Tom Kelly, just a bear of a man that was just strong and solid. So many of the guys back then, Chuck Sullivan.
Sure.
To this day, I tell people I want to grow up to be Chuck Sullivan. What, Chuck's like 83, and he still trains and he works out. He's sharp as attack. So there's a lot of people out there who have really held the ground, given us someone to inspire us along the way.
You're absolutely correct. Frank Trejo was the one that kind of embraced me when Sifu passed on, and to me, still puts tears in my eyes. He's the one that got my son involved in Kempo, and now he's 13. He was 5 years old at the time. He brought him out in the mat and started teaching him, and so God bless Frank, because he's touched everybody.
When I first met Frank, he was a friend of my instructor, Rich Callahan, and Rich has opened up a lot of doors for me. I walk in, I say, I'm Rich Callahan's student. They go, oh, we got a Callahan student here, They know that I'm going to be able to take it, anything they can dish out. Well, I walked into Frank's, and he ignored me, and he ignored me. And there was another gentleman in there by the name of Paul Gerard. And I go, Paul, I don't get it. Frank ignores me. I'd rather he yell at me. And he goes, well, Frank thinks you're a social climber because you visit Huck, you visit Mr. Parker, you go to Larry Tatum's. He only respects fighters. I said, Paul, I can fight. He goes, yeah, well, I'm just telling you what Frank would probably like to see. So I went in there one day and I fought everything on 2 feet for 2.5 hours. And I fought and fought. And then Frank is coaching one of the guys, and I'm thinking, man, this guy's hard enough. And the guy comes in, and I kind of fight like a tractor. Old school fighting, I moved in. I'm not real quick and clever. And this guy's charging in, and I'm backing up, so I dug in, and I'm driving forward. And he yells back out at Frank. He says, Frank, what if he doesn't back up? And Frank yelled back, then you're screwed. Well, at the end of the day, Frank walks by, and he looks at me and goes, not bad for a white boy. And I was elated. Man, Frank Trejo spoke right to me in person. And then not long after that, me and him were partying to the wee hours in the morning. But you had to earn your place with Frank Trejo. He'll be nice. He'll be cordial. But if you want to be one of the boys, you got to earn that.
I remember Trejo came in and says, okay, let's do sticky hands. And I go, okay, and I started out. And all of a sudden I just started feeling a thump here and a thump there, and I kept moving a thump here and a thump there, and he goes, now I want you to touch me before I thump you. I go, seriously? And well, for every thump, I think I got 7 for every one of mine, you know, but
Yeah.
yeah, he's that
Quite a
good.
guy.
He's good. There's others out there, you know, there's Mr. Pick,
Oh, yeah.
there's
I
about
often tell people that, if you never had the opportunity to be with Mr. Parker, you should be with Mr. Pick and understand what devastating power can be like. And Mike is, again, he's just another good, solid, old school guy that his job, he never tries to impress anybody. He doesn't try to talk everyone into joining up with him because he doesn't want everybody with him. He has a select group of people that are like-minded, and you don't get much more solid and straightforward as you do with Mike Pick.
That's right. That's right. What do you see now with the modern prospective student and the way the martial arts are going? What do you see Kempo's going? Is it gravitating more towards the self-defense, more towards the tournament, more towards what do you see now? And
Well, we're not flavor of the week anymore.
sure.
Back in the 70s and 80s, we could do no wrong. The system itself is still good, but it's just like a nice machete or an axe. It's a good, strong, solid tool, as good as it ever was. But people want electric chainsaws, skill saws and such, We're not offering something that as many people want. They don't want to put that kind of work in.
Sure.
And unfortunately, there's enough schools around that people can sign up at a school. Everybody wants to be a black belt. Everybody wants their children to be black belts. And that's okay. It's just like I would like to be a doctor or a rocket scientist. I'd like to graduate college. That's all good. So wanting a black belt is fine. Problem is there's so few standards on what a black belt really is. And in the old days, if you were studying karate, kempo or otherwise, you earned it. There was no way to not earn it. It was such a small group. And now, if you got a really strong school that has very high black belt standards, you're probably going to struggle in business. Because they'll go down the street. I can't tell you, you've seen it. I mean, how many times I've had people, it was kind of a funny story. I can't always use the same language, but this lady came up to me at a party and said, oh, I heard you study karate? And I go, yeah. She goes, I have a question. My son studies too. How long did it take you to get a black belt? I said, it took me 9 years. She goes, oh, well, my son, it took him 2, but he's gifted. I said, yeah, lady, and I'm frickin' retarded.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. I said, I could beat up your kid. And she looked at me, and I go, how do you talk to these people? So here's something I did, and this is actually, I find, a valuable story for people like that. I said, so with your son being a black belt, do you allow him to walk around the mall by himself? Oh, yeah, he can defend himself. He's a black belt. I said, okay. So in the same course, if it's time to come in for dinner or it's time to go to bed, he pretty much just comes in if he wants to, right? He goes, no, I go, you'll what? I said, are you a black belt? No. And then I really insulted. I said, you're just a girl, right? And she gave me that dirty look. How dare you call me a girl? And I said, but the point is, you look to weigh 130 pounds, and your son's a black belt. You're just implying to me that he can beat up a 230-pound sex-crazed maniac that's going to throw him in a van and rape and kill him. But he can't defend himself against a spanking from you. How can those two things coincide? And she really gave me a very hateful look. But it's true. Parents have to look at those little black belts. And if you're not afraid of your little black belt, don't let him go walking around the mall by himself.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely correct. Here it's more like how many tournaments you go to and so on and so forth. And I don't take mine to tournaments. I haven't in a long time. And that's what they're looking for, and of course the black belts. In 6 months to a year, black belts around here. It's a normal.
Yeah.
But, I just tell the parents, you can go down the street and get a black belt. There's no problem.
Yeah.
But,
That's just all typical karate talk. That's what we all do. We all know it. It's all out there. Nothing new. We just live with it.
and some of them say, well, I'm going to go down the street because, that's what we want. And I go right ahead. I've had several come back later on. And the school's right next to my father's. My father is a physician, ear, nose, and throat doctor, otolaryngologist. And about 2 years ago, this young man, his father took him from the school at 3 months, and he said because he was not going to get a black belt, especially in Savat. There's no black belts in Savat, And he came back, he passed through the doors, and his son had, like 2 years later, had a black eye and a broken nose and upper mandible that was busted. And he says, can he come train with you? And I said, well, what happened? I go, he got beat up by a boy that's taller than him. Well, this kid was 14, 15 years old. He was already like 5'10", 5'11", I'm like, but there's not that many boys that taller here in Laredo, for that size. But they're always bigger. And he says, would you accept it? I said, no, take him back to where you got his black belt and tell him to teach him how to fight. It's kind of...
Yeah. I think something that might be interesting to talk about a little bit is the state of associations in Kempo, because now since Mr. Parker passed away, it's like, again, one of the reasons I have so much respect for Huck was back when I was studying with Mr. Parker and occasionally with Huck, I asked him once, I said, Huck, the IKKA isn't very active. We get a newsletter now and then. And I'm just curious, I'm not suggesting, but have you ever thought about having an association of your own? He goes, I won't do anything until the old man dies. And then if he were to die and people came to me, I would consider it. And I really like that because there were some people at that time that were working around Mr. Parker, stealing his ideas and his association, his manuals, and going out and opening up as their own. So I've had a lot of respect, but since he did pass away, there are a lot of associations.
Sure.
And I've seen a lot of differences in associations. And it's almost like there are no schools. If you have one school and you got a student who opens a school, you're now an association, which is fine. But I also see those associations handing rank out willy-nilly to anybody. And now we're not talking black belt. We're talking 5th, 6th, 7th, 10th degree black belts just to get access to the students and grow their member base. That's kind of a sad thing. But on the other side of that coin, I've taught in Australia and I've taught in Chile and Argentina, Brazil, and Venezuela. And I'm so amazed at the loving spirit of so many people in these countries that on the surface appear to have less than us. Honestly, even myself, I got a great motorcycle in the garage. If somebody said, hey, Rich, you want to go work out? And the sun is shining, I'm tempted to hop on my bike and ride down to Malibu and get a beer. We have a lot of those things, temptations, whereas the guys down there have less and put more into the martial arts. I see them training harder. They're more devoted to it. Something that I saw in the 70s exists down in South America today. And that's a good thing. I really enjoy it. Some very high-spirited people that mean very well and are working hard to improve their Kempo and their students' Kempo.
Sure.
That's on a real plus side of things.
I see that energy as well, and I've taught abroad as well. And Brazil is one where my wife's from Brazil, right? She's from Goiânia, and we have clubs over there, and the energy of the athlete, the courage, the heart that they give to it.
Absolutely.
It's I made a mistake of saying I'd rather have one Brazilian martial artist for 25 of mine here, and I got kind of, puffed
I know,
up
we
their
always say
chest, and I
things
said,
that-
you know why? Because of the way they respect, their want of knowledge. Here,
Yeah.
everybody's like kind of spoiled, I guess, if you want to use that term.
We are. And, you know, if there's no harm in that, we can throw us all into the mix. We are a little bit spoiled. And that's one of the things we have to focus on. In fact, I want to mention this. A very good friend of mine, Sean Kelly. Sean and I agree on an awful lot of things, in spirit
Sure.
especially. And we were just talking the other day about we want to not challenge. I don't like challenges, and I hate Facebook posts that say, only 2% of you will repost this. Well, you're right. I never, ever will repost something when they've done something like that. But what we want to do is reach out and say, we would like people to stand beside us. And who wants to be a better example to our students these days? We have a lot of people. I was in Vina del Mar, Chile last year doing a seminar, and at the very end, I said, are there any questions? And they were mumbling and talking, and the guy said, no, you can't ask him that. And I said, no, you can ask me anything. What do you want to know? They go, well, sir, they want to know why you're not fat. I said, why should I be fat? Well, we've seen a lot of pictures of Kempo masters, and they're all fat. So how can you be one? I said, well, I don't know that I'm really a master anyway, but it is possible to be good at Kempo and not be fat. Now, that, you know, it's a sad state of the art when our art has become somewhat of a laughingstock. Now, I take things into consideration like Tom Kelly. Did you know Tom?
Yeah.
Did you work with him? Or
No, I never
he's
worked
a
with him. I
big-
knew him, yes.
He's a very big man.
Sure.
And he came up to me one time. We're all drinking beer at the Vagabond Hotel during the internationals. He walks up to me and says, you think I'm fat? So, Mr. Kelly, you know, I'm just standing here. He says, well, you know, Rich, I might be a little bit fat, but I'm solid as a rock. Punch me. Well, whack, man, I hit that big belly, and it was just kind of like me out and trying to punch a tractor tire. And so there you go. And he just turned around and walked off happy as could be. So, you know, we're not taking into account body types. We're not saying because this person is bigger and such. We're talking about the real healthy as a person, not being perfect, but as healthy as you can be based on your own anatomy.
Sure.
And we've seen too many of our people. Don't mind starting with Mr. Parker, didn't follow his own advice. In his books, he said anything in moderation. But he started writing and talking and thinking and traveling and lecturing more than actually training. I've seen so many of our people end up in that place that we would like to have a handful, and there is a good, strong handful of people who are trying to leave a little bit better example than just, I know more about Kempo than you do.
Sure.
I actually had a guy once, I don't know how big he was. He weighed maybe 300 or 400 pounds. Look me in the eye and say, I know more Kempo than you.
Good.
Yeah, okie dokie. That's fine. You know, you want to work out? Oh, I can't work out. Well, why not? Well, I'm more into the mental side of it now than I am into the physical side of it. Well, is that because you weigh 400 pounds?
You know,
No.
I've seen that, and I used to see the Kempo's get together and eat, okay? And I have a story one time. The first time I met Mr. Pick was probably 89, 90, right before I left to France. And the next time I see him was, he did a seminar at my school right before he started that Universal. He was starting the Universal Kempo Federation.
Like back in
that
the
was 94.
early,
It was 94. And I remember I had just gotten back from France from fighting over there, and I showed up on Monday, and Sifu tells me, where Mike Pick's coming in this weekend, so on and so forth. But I remember we picked him up at the airport on Friday, and we ended up getting to a Chinese buffet at 1 o'clock. And we did not leave that Chinese buffet till 7:30 at night. And there was about nine guys there, okay? And we probably had stack of plates on each side about that size, and it was kind of like, I had gone through plates as well, and but I sure was a lightweight at that time. You know what I'm saying? In comparison, and it was that enjoyment, that talking, that camaraderie.
Yeah,
went in there that just continued going and going.
With that. Last year, Chile, Argentina, and Brazil. Sure. You talk about some good food.
Sure.
I even made a joke when I went down to Australia. I got online and said, this Foster's Australian for beer. I said, Foster's, I don't really like it. I don't think a lot of people like it. I said, so here's what I'm going to do. Now, I already had this 5-week tour set up, but I said, I'm going to go to Australia. I feel it's a man's duty to find out what the best beer in Australia really is. So it was really a joke. Well, I had people meeting me at the airport to buy me beer. I'd go to lunch, and I got 6 beers lined up. And people come and say, well, Rich, which one was the best one? I go, I don't know. You got to discipline yourself. You got to be careful not to go crazy when you're out there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. And that's what you grew up with. I remember one time I showed up at Chief O'Keefe's. He called me up and he goes, what are you doing after class? It was Saturday. And I go, nah, I'm not doing anything. And he goes, you cooking tonight? Because I'm an executive chef. A lot of people don't know that. And between the restaurants and culinary school and all that, I'm going through back and forth. And he goes, what are you doing tonight? And I goes, I'm free. Well, pass by, I'm cooking a little something. Okay, well, I remember showing up and he goes, do you mind flipping the grill? Sure, and I opened up the grill. There was, all the bottom was chicken and the top was sausage and a couple of pork chops and stuff. And I go, hey, who's coming? He goes, just you and I. Okay. So that type of we grew up with, was part of Kempo training, if you want to take it that right. You know what I'm saying? So,
and when you're younger, I used to be able to live on margaritas and nachos. And I can't do that now. I'm 66 years old. I have to limit it, and get a little better. But that's part of it. Part of the example of leading is not to make these drastic changes. It's good for some people if they can, but most people can't. I'm not out there saying everybody quit doing this and only do that.
No.
But everyone should look at it and go, they see when they get to 40 and then to 50 and to 60, our metabolisms change, life changes, takes our body longer to repair. You got to play a smarter game all the way around with what you eat.
Sure.
How much rest you get, everything about it.
Changing the topic a little bit. I'm really proud of Sean Kelly, especially what he's doing with the bullying programs that he's doing back and forth.
Sean is just he's a tremendous
guy. He's doing excellent, and that's something that we as instructors need to touch more, and trying to get these kids that are getting bullied left and right, and see how we can change them and move them in a positive manner. I think that's where our focus should be. I think that's how, I guess, the future of Kempo would come from, right?
Yeah. Future of martial arts in general?
In one way.
Yeah.
In one way.
Kempo itself is an art. I don't mind it changing. Now, I just happen to be one of the guys that I teach the 24 technique system right out of the book. I don't tell them you have to do the technique exactly as it's in the book, but because if you start veering, like I changed it, I made it better, and it keeps going, and another guy goes, we're not even playing the same game anymore.
No, it's changed
completely. And I enjoy going all over and, being able to play the same game with other people. So what I do is say, yes, there's variations and you can play with it, but always bring it back to the base so that your students have the same opportunity that I had and that I gave you to see what Ed Parker did, his art. Now you can change it, and there's guys changing it to a major degree and a minor degree. Like Chuck Sullivan. He created his own Kempo system, which is really an Ed Parker, very Ed Parker-based system. And I like a lot of the things that he did. For example, he has a master form. So instead of a bunch of forms, each form ties together to make one master form at the end. And I just like the concept of it. He talked about the number of techniques. There's a funny story I was telling him once that I said, Chuck, I don't mind doing it, but I think we have a lot of material. I kind of think we have too much. He says, that's what I told Ed. Now, this was at an event that we went to maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I go, really? When did you tell him that? It was 1968. So he felt like we had too much material back then. So some people are wanting to pare it down. Some people are wanting to keep it, and some people want to move it forward. And I don't know the real answer. I think if people study the principles of Ed Parker's Kempo, there's a certain amount of latitude that they have. Some of the guys like Jeff Speakman, Mohammed Tabatabi are incorporating jiu-jitsu right into the art itself. And I see nothing really wrong with that, because if you look at our breakdowns in the techniques and the categories, we have categories for trapping and grabbing and locking and all of that stuff. We just never really developed it. But with all the grappling that is out there today, I personally think that any martial arts system that doesn't incorporate grappling is doing their students a disservice.
You're absolutely correct.
I ask people all the time, if all of a sudden, if it were legal for everyone to carry nunchakas again, so we have it slipped down our sleeve and pretty much everyone you look at has got a pair of those in their jacket, would you teach more techniques against nunchaka attacks? And if they say, of course I would. Yeah. So what do you do about the tens and hundreds of thousands of people who have spent at least 3, 4, 6, 8 months in a jiu-jitsu school? Are you now teaching more techniques to deal with their knowledge of grappling? Oh no, I'll just put my Kempo out on them, and that's unrealistic.
No.
So I do like the people that are bringing grappling into our art.
And not only grappling, you have a lot of systems out there that carry blades. I mean, all your Filipino systems carry blades. Your Indonesian
I'm a runner, right?
So some of the silats. So here in Texas, I mean, we can carry a blade of any size. So you have to make sure that there's a particular point in time that your students better know how to use a blade.
Well, you didn't.
You understand what I'm saying? So, yeah.
I know that slipped by you, but I said, I'm a runner, right?
Yeah. Well, no,
and
I understand. But
if I'm just a little bit quicker than you, I'm capable of marathon distances.
Sure.
So unless you're pretty quick on your feet, I'm out of there.
No, you're absolutely correct. Now, does that mean that we're going to teach them to carry a blade and go out there and fight? No, I'm just telling you that they have to be exposed to that. And if not, lead them to the instructor that does. You see, I have no quarrel in sending a student to learn eskrima or to learn serrada or to learn one of the silats, if that's what they want. Go. Teach them to kick punch correctly, and if they want to go specialize. If that's the
ultimately, any martial art that I've ever been involved with, from judo, jiu-jitsu, karate, taekwondo, all the stuff that come in line, if you get good at any of them, you can utilize that to protect yourself against the common attacker.
The common attacker.
Yeah, most people don't know martial arts. It's like when I went to Brazil. It was like we used to think everybody from Japan knew karate. They don't. I went to Brazil, and they go, "Oh, what are you doing here?" I said, "I'm here to study jiu-jitsu." And they go, "Isn't that a Japanese art?" I go, "No, Brazilian jiu-jitsu." They go, "Brazilian jiu-jitsu?"
Yeah, over there it's jiu-jitsu. It's not Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
They could not. We think of it as like it's everywhere. Well, it isn't everywhere. Martial artists aren't everywhere. Not everybody you look at is an MMA fighter. So most people who study a given martial art are going to be able, if they get good at it, they'll be able to defend themselves against a lot of common situations. Now, will Taekwondo beat Kempo, Kempo beat Judo? None of that matters. That's just how good you are at your art. And I'm very confident that at my level of Kempo, I can beat up most white belts in any other art, providing they're not, 6'10" and weigh 400 pounds.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the coin, as an 8th degree black belt in Kempo with 46 years experience, the last thing I want to fight is a brown belt in anybody's system.
You're absolutely correct. And those are good words, Professor. And man, folks need to understand that. And I say this, I'd rather have a student that wants to come in there and they say, I've never taken a martial art before, than taking some of those that come from the local corner kick and punch school or chop and block school, you know. And all
Much
of a
easier
sudden,
that way.
and it's a lot easier because it, you know, and I don't know, it's just a lot easier. It's a lot easier. That doesn't mean I won't accept a student that has previous martial arts experience, but it's a lot easier to get somebody right off the street.
You just got to get them through that phase of them not being there to see what you have to offer. In the beginning, they tend to be there to show you what they have to offer.
Sure.
It's just there that you do it. You either, you know, draw a line in the sand and say, I don't accept anybody who's got previous training, or accept the fact that anybody with previous training is going to want to rely on it, and we're going to mention it, because you feel that sense of insecurity when you go into a new school. And you got to cut them some slack and let them have that opportunity to get comfortable.
Sure. Now let me ask you this: what are you getting more now? Are you getting more women involved in the martial arts as before? Kids, teens, men?
Well, of course, you know, all the schools today are based on children. And here's something I think word of advice to these people. I've had many people in the school say, how do you get adults? All I can get is kids. Well, there's this thing about reality-based systems, and that's not what I'm talking about as far as when they say reality-based, and there's a picture of a guy with a knife in his teeth and a bandolera of bullets around him, and he's crawling through the jungle. You know, that's not what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about who has ever martial art to be legitimate. They say that you can only charge so much money, and if you don't promote them soon enough, they're going to quit. And make sure nobody gets hurt, because if they get hurt, they're going to quit. And I go, have you ever visited Jiu-Jitsu Academy? Okay. You can be a white belt for 2 years. People are still there. Jiu-Jitsu can cost $140, $200 a month. Get hurt, you're going to get hurt. It's not you might get hurt, you're going to get hurt. But those schools have more students than most karate schools today.
Why is that?
I believe the reason is they are actually getting better at their ability to defend themselves. You get out of a jiu-jitsu school, you're dripping wet, you bag that gi up, and you're pumped and you're sore the next day, and 3 months later you're going, you know, I am more capable today of defending myself than I was 3 months ago, for sure. For that, I'm willing to pay more money. I'm willing to go through some injuries. I'm willing to be a white belt because I am still able to defend myself. I have actually had a lot of Kempo guys come to me at brown belt and say, Mr. Hale, you know, I almost got into a fight the other day, and I was very, very concerned, you know. I know a lot of techniques and forms and sets, and I've sparred, but I don't know, man, I felt like something was missing. You go, that's a shame. In my opinion, there's too much memorization in the art of American Kempo. What people want today, they want to come to class half as often for half as long and get promoted twice as fast. Now, if we do that, they are not going to get that feeling of self-confidence.
No, they're not.
And the reason we don't have the adults is they'll come in there for a while and they're not feeling that sense of empowerment. So I'm not spending my money on this. The schools have to hold that line and be a result-driven school. And then I think more karate schools will have more people.
Yeah,
but it's a hard line to draw.
You're absolutely correct. I was in Brazil in December, and I was teaching out there, and I told them, why is it that, especially in capoeira, you know, I was around that circle, and I was teaching savate, and my wife has her capoeira group over there as well as here, and we're touching base on the popularity right now in Brazil is actually Thai boxing. Okay? Thai boxing across MMA. All right? And a lot of folks don't understand that a lot of the capoeiras are actually the better fighters in the MMA arena Brazil. Well, that's besides the point. And I said, what is actually the level, how can I say, of society based? What is the demographics? And they said, jiu-jitsu is for the middle, upper middle, higher class in society. Capoeira is kind of for everybody. And Thai boxing, it's a little bit lower in the price range. So it was, everything over there was fixated against price. Okay, understand? And I said, well, why does jiu-jitsu, why is it more popular? And they all said it's because they don't hit anybody in the face. And I said, okay.
That's so untrue.
You know what I'm saying?
I got 8 stitches right here.
You know, wait a minute. And then I looked at them and I said, okay. And then you start looking at capoeira, and depending on where you are in the thing, it's either a bloodbath or it's an academic Zumba class. Understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I was like trying to figure out what was going on. And then there's people like you that you guys go train and so on and so forth, and you say, here's my stitches right here, I can prove it. No, it happens. What have we lost in Kempo that are not bringing in numbers in comparison to Jiu-Jitsu? Would you say the lack of contact, or would you say the speeding through the belt system?
Well, yeah, there's 2 things. Let's go on to a simple one. I used to work for a company called Sir Vega. We made speakers.
Okay.
And we started struggling, and it wasn't because people didn't like our speakers. It wasn't because they were buying Bose and Harman Kardon and all of that. It was because our money was now being divided up amongst laptop computers and telephones and Walkmans and watches. The electronics money was being divvied up. So when there was that time that Kempo was really the most revolutionary art, not that anybody needs to agree, it's not even a point of agreement, it's that, as we all know, the Japanese martial arts systems are all very similar to one another, and many of them share the same katas. You know, Basadai is a brown belt kata in a half a dozen Japanese systems. I'm a black belt in Taekwondo.
Sure.
And one day, my hand was vertical instead of horizontal, and my teacher says, no. Go what? He says, Taekwondo, Tangsudo. Taekwondo, Tangsudo. I go, really? That's the difference? Yeah, big difference. So the Korean systems are very similar. Chinese are very similar. At the time that Ed Parker created the Kempo system, it was just different than everybody else's. You had a lot of different things going on in it, and it was very attractive to people. Sure. Well, now, there's more Kempo-like systems available to people today. There are a lot of systems that truly are Kempo, but are really not even called Kempo. You know, they're called Bob's Karate. So there's just so much diversification out there. There's so many different schools out there. But as we mentioned earlier, the biggest thing is that there are so many schools that you can get a black belt in certain schools and never, ever fight.
Correct.
Not even spar, not freestyle. And you can still become a black belt. And that's commercially, that's very hard to compete with. There are those times, you know, people think I'm a black belt, and so is he. Oh, actually this happened. I'll tell you a very quick story. A guy comes into my school. He talked to me for 2 hours. And he called me 3 days later and said, well, Mr. Hale, I really like talking to you. You seem very knowledgeable, and I loved your school, but I've decided to go somewhere else. And I go, I don't normally ask, but I'm curious. We did spend 2 hours together. He goes, well, you told me if I worked really hard and I came to class 2 to 3 days a week, it would probably take me 4 to 6 years to get a black belt. If all goes well, really well. Maybe longer. And I go, yeah. He says, well, I visited another school, and he could make me a black belt, he said, in 2 years. So, therefore, he must be twice as good a teacher as you. Yeah, I was silent too. Because they can't quantify the quality of a martial art. To them, a black belt is a black belt.
Yeah.
It's like me saying, I saw a car in the paper, I saw a car in the paper for $1,000. I saw another car for $2,000. Well, they're both cars. I'd be stupid to spend $2,000 on a car when I can get one for $1,000.
Yeah.
So when people come in off the street and they find out you can get a black belt in 2 years here, but it's going to take you 4 to 6 years or 8 years here, well, they're going to gravitate to the black belt in 2 years.
Sure. You're absolutely
We're screwed. And Kempo as an art, even a bad Kempo school, you can't get a black belt in 2 years.
No, you're absolutely correct. And here's one that used to happen, who happens to us a lot. We get little Johnny that's been around with us for about 3 months, and or maybe 6 months. The mom would take him off and stick him down the street, and he's already a red or a brown. And the reason they tell him, bring him over here because I know that he was Buitron's student over there to teach him how to fight. So I'm like, okay. But it happens. It happens. And
I will mention something in Kempo that I think is very pertinent to this conversation is that it's not difficult to understand that Kempo, Ed Parker's American Kempo, was never designed for children.
no, it wasn't.
They were not even a consideration. They weren't part of the planning process. So now you have, like we have a technique called the sleeper.
Sure.
So a guy punches, you block, you come around his neck, and you get behind him, and you're supposed to take him down. I said, you get 6 kids doing sleeper. You got 3 pair. How many kids fall down? 6. They don't have the motor skills to stand up and sweep one another from that position. You're trying to teach techniques, technical techniques to children who can't tie their own shoes yet. They can't tie their belts. They're sitting there literally chewing on their belt, and we're trying to teach these guys techniques that adults have found difficult to learn since the inception. So this is part now of why Kempo is developing a less quality student than we used to. We came in at adult level. I was 20 when I started Kempo. So a lot was demanded of us. Today, you cannot expect that much of a child. So they've really both dumbed down the system and lowered the requirements and said they're getting a children's black belt.
Yeah, and I've heard
Problem
that.
is, as they grow up, they've practiced now all these years. They didn't require them to have good footwork. They didn't make sure they had good focus. They didn't absolutely confirm they got a good fist and kept their elbow in and pivoted with their hips. You can't ask that of a child. So now they've got 5, 6, 8 years of Kempo training. Now they're growing into the adult world, and they don't have any of that. And it's extremely hard to go back now and say, develop good movement. So we're kind of building in the inadequacies, so by the time they reach adulthood, they're almost a lost cause. I mean, they would, if somebody came to me and said, oh yeah, my little Johnny studied for 6 years at a school and he's a Kempo black belt, I don't want him.
No, you're absolutely correct.
I'd much rather have a complete beginner.
Yeah, that's what happens here. That's what happens.
And I understand having the children, and I don't think people should not have children. I think they should, but I think they need to reformulate the Kempo system for children. And then the belt-wise, what I love about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, especially in the IBJJF, International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation, there's like 26 belts for children. Not one of them is a blue, purple, brown, or black. Mm-hmm. Children want to be promoted.
Sure.
Okay? So you give them a yellow belt and a yellow belt with a stripe and a gray belt and a plain gray belt and a striped belt and then stripes on the belts, and they're happy. They're getting promoted. In Kempo, we have that problem of saying you are a yellow, orange, purple, blue, green, brown, black belt, and they're not. Yeah. They have no right being any of those belts. So I think Jiu-Jitsu looked at what happened in a lot of martial arts and saw these kids' belts and determined that We need a different belt structure. And so now they move into jiu-jitsu at an adult level, and at best they'll walk into it as a blue belt, and then they start earning their ranks. They're holding their feet to the fire a lot better. I think we can learn a lot from the organizations and the structure of the jiu-jitsu systems today, because they've seen the mistakes that we made. They're not even so much mistakes, but things evolve. You know, you don't really consider it a mistake if you're planting a garden. You've never planted a garden, so you did it wrong. Well, I'm just learning, you know. We all learn.
Sure. Here's something, because we're almost getting out of time here.
All righty.
What would you say to the beginner, the person that's looking for martial arts? What words of advice to search for a school?
Well, I tell people, first off, children don't quit schools. Parents quit.
Parents quit.
So, yeah, and I tell the parents when they're going to go look at a school, don't pick the school that's on the corner because it's convenient. Go in there, watch that school for weeks. Get there early, leave late. How do the people treat one another on a social basis? How does the instructor treat people before and after class? Everything about it. It's because your children are going to grow up to be like that teacher. They're going to move like them, talk like them, think like them. We're very influential in that realm. And then decide which school you really want to take them to. So that's for children. For adults, I tell people as an adult, if you really want to get good at this art, we have this saying in Kempo all the time when you're getting your belt, that if you don't feel you've earned this belt, walk away. Don't accept it. I've never seen it happen. I've heard it happen once. But after class, people come to me all the time and go, man, you know, I didn't feel like I really earned it. Oh, well, why didn't you deny it? Well, I'll grow into it. I want people to sit there and say, if you want to be a good martial artist, you deny every belt they bring toward you. You get to the point where that teacher finally says, look, either you accept this yellow, orange, purple belt, or you have to quit showing up here. I have determined you will take that belt. Okay. Boy, would teachers love to hear that for a change, instead of, well, I've been here longer than him.
Sure.
I should have my belt. I beat him up. I'm a better fighter than him.
Sure.
You know, they do all these things to chase rank. If you're an adult and you want to be good at the martial arts, fight anybody who wants to promote you. Stay as low a rank as you can stay for as long as you can stay there. That will put the quality back in. That will give us people that are studying the martial arts for 6, 8, 10, and 12 years. And when they put on that black belt, they're going to be solid and strong.
No, I tell people this. As soon as you start putting on degrees and bars and stuff on belts, folks want to compete with one another. Take them off. Just wear solid black. And show them on the mat what you can do. Show them how.
In the Kempo system, we have all the stripes. And I myself, I have a belt. It has one long red line around it. And we've run out of time probably in regard to how I came about my own association in the belt and the system and all.
Sure.
But basically, I just wear that belt. There's a red line around the belt. It's just a black belt in the Ohana Kempo Karate Association. Anybody in my association who has a certificate from me is welcome to wear that belt. There are no stripes. We can still get promoted, but I myself, I got my first degree black belt and I looked in the mirror and I thought, man, that looks dumb, man. I want to look like Huck Planis. He was a 4th. That looked cool. And it's a temptation. No different than your neighbor got a brand new, nice looking car. Well, I want one too. Maybe I can't afford it, but I go into Hawk because I want it. But if those stripes aren't on the belt, now you're being judged by how good you are.
Sure.
And the bad part is you see a guy wearing a 5th. Well, if he's a 5th, I'm a 6th.
Sure.
Well, no, you're not a 6th. Maybe that guy should be a brown belt. So don't go promoting yourself
And then you
above other people.
Exactly right. And then you see now you got guys going 12s and 13s, and I saw one guy in the tournament with a 15th degree, and I was like, okay, to each his own, and to the pie, But hey, it's not me that's going to be fighting for you. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
So, but it's a pleasure, and it's great
Well, thank you,
words.
sir.
It was awesome talking to you. We'll do it again later on this year, and I think we
Good
have
deal.
fun and keep on teaching. You're an inspiration to
Yeah,
many.
you too. You know, I've always been proud of the work you're doing. And
Well, thanks.
it's good to see, you know, it's nice to have, I have a handful of real friends out there who I truly admire and respect that are holding that line and are good, strong, solid people that are an example to people. And I'm very happy that you are one of my friends and we are on that same path together. So we'll both keep up the good work and
Just Kempo
hopefully
brothers, that's
we'll
who we are. Big old
come
family.
to something out of it.
Be safe, and you have a good one.
Okay, my friend, take care
All
now.
right. Until next time, you guys. We'll see you in gloves off. Peace.
Bye.